Good evening. This is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for November 9th, 2015. And just as a reminder, if everyone could check your electronic device, make sure it's either turned off or turned down as low as possible. And if you also plan on speaking this evening, if you could sign in at the podium with your name and address before addressing the board. And our first order of business is under continuances. This is ZB 2015-37. The petition's a variance. The applicant is Christopher Glover. Property is located at 48 Epping Street. And the petition is a variance approval for the installation of a new shed within the front yard setback requirements. The project requires variance approval under section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Mr. Gruber? And Glover, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, I called you Gruber as opposed to Glover.
It's actually Gleba, but that's fine with me.
Okay.
And so this is a continuation of our discussion from the last meeting. And in that meeting, the board gave a lot of very useful feedback. We took that and went and redesigned. And so what happens, as a summary, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a summary of what we believe the feedback was. You guys can correct me on anything I misinterpreted. We can go through and, and approach how we try to incorporate the feedback into the new design. And so at the last meeting, we discussed and we removed location A as one of the options. There were some compromises which we didn't want to work through. And then what happens is basically recommended we create a new design for location B. It was recommended that we reconsider kids' playhouse portion of it, which we agree with. One thing we made a mistake with is aesthetically the shed probably would be non-obtrusive, whereas we're looking to make it fit in previously. We based upon the feedback, we understand the better route is try and make it as rather than making it stand out, make it as non-visible as possible. And then what happens, fire escape routes, we need to take that into consideration too. There should be some setback. We should have landscaping in the design. And what happens, I should do a better job of verbally explaining our thoughts overall. And then I think that's pretty much all. Did I miss anything else you guys can think of?
Well, so you submitted a package that was dated yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
You sent it to the city. I'm not sure if all the board members have looked through the package. So as far as, so we're talking about option B.
That's correct.
Correct? So could you just, I know I've looked through what you submitted. I know the city was out to your residence to
That's
take
correct.
a look. So could you just describe, obviously you're coming in with a new structure now, or accessory building. So could you just run through the design of that, even though we've
sure.
seen it? If you could just run through it and give us your thoughts on that, please.
So unlike the previous design, which was a little bit bold and stood out a little bit, perhaps we aimed very carefully to try and make it not as obtrusive as possible. So in this particular case, the shed is smaller than it was previously, and it's also square-shaped. What happens, it's basically a 10 foot by 10 foot box, just short of 10 feet in the third dimension. And what happens, in this particular case, we keep it one color also. It's going to be gray. And then also we set it back from the street a little bit. And what happens, we're going to put shrubbery in front of it in order to try to hide it. And then in addition, because the roof is flat, it actually brings in a lot of different it brings advantages to a few other things that were brought up before. Like we had talked about the fire escape routes. What happens, the flat roof allows people to climb over the shed if necessary in an emergency, and also allows people to jump down from the porch roof. What happens if later on in the pack you see the fire escape plans. And then in addition, what happens, the flat roof also takes care of all snow storage. It basically sits on the top. And then also what happens, we grab the water and we put it down to a dry well underneath. And then beyond that, I think that pretty much covers most of the feedback. And like I said, we moved location A where there's no kids' playhouse anymore. It's shorter, it's less obtrusive. We have fire escape routes, we have some setback, and then I got a basic verbal summary. And so, is there any other basic questions or?
Currently in that location where you plan on going with the new shed, there's an existing fence there, correct?
That's correct.
So what's the plan with the fence?
The plan is to take the fence down, and what happens where the fence is currently, we'll put in in between the setback between the retaining wall and the shed, we'll go the shrubs and also flowers in front of it.
Yeah. And as far as your, I guess I'll call it the latest set of plans, as far as the setback, now, the zone calls for 15 feet for the setback.
That's correct.
What you've proposed looks like it's approximately like approximately 3.5 feet
That's correct.
setback, okay. I think one of the board members had asked the question, if the structure was going to go there, could it go back a little bit further? And I believe if you can just let the board know again, what was the concern about moving it back?
Oh, so it happens initially, we had placed it right up against the street, and as the feedback was, which I do see is the door, especially access into there, is right on the street, it'd probably feel pretty uncomfortable. And also being right on the street, it's also very bold, and it sits out and everybody can see it. So what happens, we moved it back by about 3 feet, and the feedback from the board at the time, if I got it correctly, was we try to match the setback of the house itself. Now, to be clear, we have matched the setback to the overhang of the house. We haven't matched the setback to the house itself. Now, a limitation on why we can't go all the ways back is that over on the western part of the house, there's a power meter, and we'd have to move the power meter. And then also there's a basement window in the western part of the house, which will get blocked if we go from much farther back.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you want to add at this point?
No, I just like to give the opportunity for neighbors to provide feedback too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll open it up to the public again. But I appreciate the package you put together.
Okay.
I think I told you this at the last meeting. You're probably one of the few petitioners that's ever come in here with a pretty in-depth overview of your project. So
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate the detail. And if you have nothing else, then we'll open it up to the public.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Cindy Hall. I live in the 42 Epping Street property that abuts the back of their property.
Yep.
I'm happy that they took down the shed where it was, but there's still a foundation that's still there, and there's pipes. So I'm trying to figure out, is that like electrical wiring or something that's going down through those pipes?
Okay.
So I'm concerned about that. I haven't seen the new plans on what the structure's going to look like. How tall is it? I thought it had to be 10 feet from the building, and there's really only 8 feet between their house and my fence. So I don't understand how, yeah.
Joe, do you have anything that this?
Sure, I can address that, Mr. Chairman. Typically, the requirement for an accessory structure is that it be 10 feet away from the house. In this case, there is a limited amount of land available in between the house and the property line. It is about 8 to 9 feet.
Oh, thank you.
So it'd be a challenge in the back area where the board seemed to indicate they would prefer a shed to be located to meet that requirement, given the lack of space.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm still concerned about, I don't understand the fire escapes. I mean, there's only between here and that enough room, so I don't understand how they have a fire escape plan on top of their roof.
On top of their roof?
Is that what you said, Chris?
Right.
I
So
have
let
to
me,
read this. I mean,
let me
yeah.
address it, and if I don't address it
Okay.
correctly, then you
Sure.
can correct me. One of the items that was in Mr. Glover's outline here talked about fire escapes, and one of the options that the petitioner would have now, if they were on the second floor, they could actually depart the building from the second floor and actually be able to, I forget what the verbiage was that he used, but to jump onto, because it'll be a flat roof, they'll at least have an opportunity to exit the home in the event of a fire if they couldn't get downstairs.
Okay.
It just gave them another opportunity to leap and make it without, killing themselves. But
Sure.
the distance isn't that great, that at least they had that opportunity. That was what one of the feedbacks was.
So has the board approved the height and the new plans? Because I haven't,
It's,
this
10
is the
by-
first time I've,
It's 10 by 10.
I'm sorry?
It's 10 by 10,
Okay, okay,
so it's
It's under-
not as height, it's not the height that the previous structure was at,
okay.
but they've reduced the height, and I believe the petitioner gave you his rendition of, did he give the
He
copy?
just gave it to me now, so
Yep,
I'll have to
yep.
read through it.
But
Okay, and I'm just concerned about these electrical, the pipes and that kind of thing. I
Okay,
don't
we can-
understand
we
what
can
all those
talk about that,
pipes.
yeah.
Yeah, because I've asked about it, and I know this, he said it was a dry well, I'm not sure, I haven't researched that, I don't know exactly what that is, but there's all this digging going on and PVC pipes going out towards our driveway, and we've had some issues with some sewer problems with the other units. So I'm
Okay.
just concerned about where this water flow, with, are these electrical wirings, or are they, water pipes, what is it? So that's just a concern I had. And the last thing was just I know they took down that structure, but there's still all cement there with
Yep.
these pipes coming up. So just wanted to
Okay,
find out what that is.
we'll address that with him, sure.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Opposition. Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, well, for one thing, I'm not allowed to vote this evening because I was not here for the initial presentation, so I double-checked with Joe, and he did say that I could participate in the discussion, but I think I'll probably just decline to do that, and the only thing I wanted to say is I do appreciate the petitioner, based on the feedback in the last meeting, coming back with a new revised plan, but I think I'll just withhold any comment on the new plan. I usually only watch the replays of the ZBA when I know I'm going to see myself on them, and so I didn't watch the replay the last time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Glover, I do appreciate the detailed plans that you presented and kind of a more palatable kind of option. I still have some concerns, but, like I said, it's a very detailed plan, and it is, you did take into account a lot of the feedback comments the board had. But, overall, I think I'm still undecided, so I'll probably wait to see what my colleagues say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Van. Dennis?
Through Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of questions, but I think that the new design does have a lot of merit, and it almost appears as though it's like a gate or a fence kind of element more than just a shed. So I think that we've made some good strides as far as creating something that doesn't appear like a big structure. The plan that we have from you, property plan proposed sheet, I don't know if there's a number on it, but it's basically a layout plan.
Yes.
What I was hoping to see is an alignment with the roof overhang of the porch and the new front facade of the gate building shed element.
Oh,
And it looks like sometimes it's really close, and in some sketches, it's kind of like a foot or two apart.
Yeah, there was actually an aesthetic consideration there, and that's why it looks so close. Is what happens is if you look on this drawing actually says it the best, right? It's on page 8. It's the 3D rendering. And what happens, I don't have a photograph, unfortunately. And so what happens is the overhang up on the top here comes to about right here on the wall. Comes to about right here on the wall. And what happens, we lined up the shed with the transition on the wall itself down there. And so it is about, I don't know, probably about 6 inches or 8 inches difference. What happens, it was the aesthetic consideration right down here to match it up with the wall itself, so that it's all symmetrical. Does that make sense? If necessary, we can go back to the roof overhang. That's not a problem whatsoever. It just looked a little bit better lined up with the wall. It's not that much of a difference in space.
So I'm looking at your photograph of the front facade there,
Oh, sure.
and I'm having trouble seeing the wall that you're describing in the photograph.
Oh, let me bring it over. Let me get to that page. Do you mind if I approach? I can point it out.
Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I have to see, it's actually hidden behind the fence right there.
I just think, especially from a massing standpoint along the street facade, I think that aligning it with the front of the porch overhang extends that wall element of the structure.
Okay.
So I kind of feel that that's more imposing as far as the height of this 10-foot high than the retaining wall. So I think that
Right.
aligning it with that front edge of the porch would be a continuation of the structure that's already there, in my opinion.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, well, that's we can definitely take into consideration. The one other aspect too is that this is actually less imposing the fences there currently. So, I mean, there is some gain. Well, if you feel strongly about that, we can definitely do that.
And then what do you have for a dimension between the property line and the edge of the structure?
The property line to the west and the edge of the structure is about 1.5 feet because the property line is actually beyond the retaining wall.
So you're over a foot then
That's correct.
to the property line here, okay. And how about the dimension between the structure and the house, the existing house?
Oh, it's only about 6 inches.
So you're leaving yourself a 6-inch gap. How do you maintain that space?
Oh, what happens, we weren't planning on having to do maintenance inside there. What happens, we're going to put materials inside there that wouldn't require maintenance in the future. Like, for instance, the siding in the house is steel. It's not blocking access to any of the electrical wires or any of the paneling. And then what happens on the flip side, we're going to put the steel also on the inside of the shed too. If necessary, we could also change the design so we can access from the inside, like we could put in a cabinet door or something like that. That could make it easier too.
I have a question for you, Joe. If the shed were to be attached to the house, would it become an addition then, and then no longer a shed, and that would change the characteristics of the variance, right?
Slightly, but it would still be a variance from setbacks, so you'd still be talking about variance for a structure, whether it's accessory or whether it's the primary structure. It would still be a variance from setbacks if you wanted to connect it.
I just think that it's a little odd that you're allowing yourself a 6-inch gap, and it does seem like a lot of pain and aggravation to go through, and it would almost seem like the 6-inch gap is an afterthought rather than tie it right into the existing structure.
Oh, yeah, what happens, the one thing that would make it a lot easier is actually bring it up right against the existing structure, flash it so it comes back over,
Right.
and then I have to deal with it again. The only reason why we left the gap was simply because we didn't want to attach the house for zoning purposes.
Right.
We would have no opposition attached to the house at all.
Good.
Yeah.
I just think that it'd be an improvement. I'll wait to hear how the fellow board members feel, but
Okay.
I think that aligning it with the edge of the porch so that you have basically a continuation of the front of the house, and then attaching it to the structure would be improvements to the design that I think I'd be in favor of.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay, thank you very much. And you do expect to have a green roof on this structure?
Oh, yeah, so that's another piece of feedback is what happens, we were considering putting a garden on top of the roof. Now, what happens is that it's one of those cases that's unusual, so we want to get your feedback before we did such a thing, and so,
I think it's a great idea.
okay.
Yeah, I love the idea of green roofs, especially where they help with site drainage. They absorb some of the water, the runoff
Right.
water anyway, so, Great idea.
Oh, thank you.
Just a couple of questions. The questions that were asked by your abutter, can you talk about the, I'll call it water mitigation, what your plan was? You addressed it, but can you just speak to that?
Oh, yeah, so water mitigation, what happens underneath the structure is going to be, it is a dry well, actually, from a previous project. And what happens, if you look on the 3D rendering and also a few other different drawings, there's a drain that will come down from the structure itself into the dry well that's underneath the structure, which then goes out into the yard. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, it's the 3D drawing. It, right here, it's on page number 8, and there's the drain on the roof itself. So what happens is that there is no water requirements that I know of in Lowell. For instance, we could dump it onto the street, I believe, but we don't like doing that. In fact, what happens in our deep energy retrofit, we specifically drained everything into the yard itself and sunk into the ground. So what happens, we want to do the same thing with the shed and just continue with that. And that's the PVC pipes, though, from the previous project. It was one heck of a water mitigation plan. I mean,
Okay. And the other question was around where you took the structure down. What's your plans for what's there now?
oh, so there's 3 pieces. The first part is we've been working with Paul Winchester over in development, the inspectional services. What happens, we took down the top part of the shed, we got into a bagster, that's gonna be picked up this week. Waste management's a little behind, so we gotta take a little while. Second part is I'm gonna take out the platform. Then what happens afterwards, we're not too sure what the plan is for the 4 concrete footings yet, but we're thinking along the lines of perhaps putting a table there or something. We have raised garden beds going around the front of the house, and we're thinking of putting a table there or something like that where we can work in the raised garden beds. Well, that's one possibility. We're open to other ideas too. The other possibility is I can actually rip out the footings too. I tell you the truth, I haven't given a lot of thought to what we're going to do with the footings yet. And so if I can make it a follow-up item for the variance hearing, if you wish, we can make a plan for that.
So, Joe, in regards to where the original structure was and the petition has taken it down, does the city need to be involved at all about what's left there and what the options are to, leave them, or do they have to be removed?
The structure should be removed in its entirety. Whether or not something new is going there would be reviewed at that point, like a retaining wall, for instance. A building permit's only required if it's over 4 feet in height. Just as an example, we would review that specifically when it came up. The previous structure should be removed.
Right. But as far as anything that's within the ground right now, I know the petitioner mentioned maybe some opportunities that he's looking at, but just to address the neighbor's concern, is there anything the city would be doing as follow-up, or, I mean, how would we handle that? Because I don't think that's ever come across this table.
Sure. In terms of any piping that's being run or anything like that, anything with utilities is reviewed by the engineering department, and anything relating to a structure is reviewed by the building department. The building inspector has been out there and hasn't come upon any issues at this point. We could ask someone from the engineering department to go out there if the board would like.
All right, I'm going to move it on to Gary. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my concerns and questions were answered through Mr. McCarthy, so I have no further comments at this time.
Oh, thank you.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the petitioner for readdressing. After the last meeting, we had, I had some serious concerns about the breakdown of moving it to the option B about the possible cutting off of an egress there for the possible fire concerns. But you did provide that in your package, and which was very, very well maintained. I appreciate the taking in all the information from the prior meeting from the board and some of the concerns that were addressed at that point. And I think option B now looks a little clearer to me, and it looks like a lot better than what was previously proposed. So I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, actually, I do want to say also, thank you for bringing up the feedback with the fire, because it actually gave us the idea about the flat roof, and so that was very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess one follow-up. So Dennis had asked about lining up the structure with the front of the house there. I know we talked about attaching it, correct?
Yes.
Was there any other changes that you and the petitioner were talking about? Is the structure going to stay still at approximately 3.5 feet in from the street, or is it moving any further in?
I'd suggest that we align it with the overhang of the porch, which is approximately 4 feet in from the curb.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, as I stated at the beginning, appreciate the second set of plans that you put together here and the summary that you've provided. Providing the summary gives the board a good opportunity to understand exactly what your intentions are.
Thank you.
Sometimes just looking at drawings, one just looks at them and assumes things, but if you have some narrative to it, that certainly helps the board. So the purpose now is we're here for a variance, and because of, again, the front yard setback, and if we look at the prerequisites for a variance to be granted, one of the prerequisites has to do with, the shape and size of the lot, and obviously, because the first opportunity you came in with, we had issues with sightlines and safety with traffic, and by moving this to a different area in the lot, it provided some new challenges as far as meeting code. But I believe, based on the criteria and prerequisites that the board takes a look at, and one of the major ones is, relating to the shape and size of the lot, and but also making sure that, by granting this, it doesn't create a hardship to the neighborhood. Obviously, the first structure was going to cause issues regarding safety per the city review. So I think by relocating and coming up with a new plan, and obviously you've knocked down the size of it, you're providing some water mitigation plans, which is very important. We don't want that coming off onto the sidewalk or the street. And I believe, based on that and the comments by the board, I would be in favor. The only thing I want to run through right now is a set of conditions. And so a couple of things I heard was, I guess, to attach it to the home, and also to move it in from the current plan from like approximately 3.5 to 4 feet. So I guess we would need just a revision on the plans to be resubmitted to the city just to show those changes.
Yes.
Okay. The fence will be removed, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Were there any other comments or conditions any other board members had? Yep.
The condition regarding the foundation, the existing foundation for the shed, to be removed? Or is that something that they be doing regardless? Is there an existing shed foundation currently
Yeah.
in place that's?
In location A,
modified?
which we had spoke about earlier, there was a shed there, and what happens, I took it down. And what happens is it's a three-part, what happens, the top part of the shed's taken down already. It's in a bagster. That bag's gonna be removed, I'm gonna remove the pad that's underneath it. And once that's removed, there's 4 posts. It basically sits on piers. And what happens, the question remains, what's gonna happen with those piers? And so far, we haven't made a plan. There's a number of ideas what we can do with it, and we would be willing to submit a plan of what we're gonna do with those 4 posts.
Yeah. Well, do you want to condition that, or?
It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really sure I want to condition that, because that's pretty much why I asked the question to Joe about, I'll call it follow-up, that the city would conduct. Again, the neighbor has a concern about it. My expectation is it's going to be resolved. Now, if you can make a table out of it, for instance, but the city department has no issues with it, but I don't want it probably sitting there for the next 2 years looking like that.
Oh, we definitely won't leave it there for
I
2
know.
years, yeah.
So, Joe, I don't want to condition it, but I guess, you know, this is almost like having an administrative review just to ensure that the site of location A has been, you know, satisfied per city code.
Sure,
I guess
we can do
we'll
that.
call it that. So I think maybe I'll condition it, but we do administrative reviews on some projects. It's just to have a follow-up that the city would conduct to ensure that that area is you're either going to get rid of it, or if you're able to utilize it in its current state, and there's no issues with the city departments, then we just want to make sure something happens with that.
That sounds very reasonable.
Okay, good. All right, any other conditions, comments? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion, please? Yeah, make it 6 months, because now we're moving into winter, yeah.
Excuse me, can I forgot to present this photo of the foundation for the shed. Can I just give you that so you can see what it looks like?
I can't,
Can't take it now.
no, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2015-037 for a variance at 48 Epping Street for the installation of a new shed within the front yard setback with the following conditions: that the drawing submitted for option B be accepted with 2 clarifications: that the new shed be constructed at approximately 4 feet from the front sidewalk to align with the porch overhang of the existing structure. Number 2, that we allow the applicant to attach the shed to the existing structure and eliminate the 6-inch gap between the two. Number 3, that the revised plans be resubmitted with modifications to DPD for review. And number 4, that we have an administrative review in 6 months to review the progress of the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second the motion.
Roll call?
Mr. Callahan,
Approve conditions.
Mr. Perrin,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Peck.
Approve with conditions.
Okay, sir, you've been approved, and we wish you the best of luck with the finished product.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you, neighbors, for showing up. Certainly appreciate it. All right, our next order of business under new business. This is ZB 2015-38, petitions variance. The applicant is Clement Skarupaka, property located at 167 School Street. And the petitions, the proposal consists of the conversion of a 2-family dwelling to a 3-family dwelling on the subject property without a number of dimensional requirements. The proposed project is located in a traditional multifamily zoning district and requires variance approval from the zoning board under section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. And we have received communication from the petitioner, and they are requesting that they have a continuance to the December 7th meeting, and the purpose of the continuance is they're going before the planning board, Joe? Is that what they're indicating here?
Yes, that's correct. This petition's also going from the planning board.
Okay.
They were continued to the planning board's December 7th meeting, so they need to come in front of this board after that, so it'll be the December 14th meeting of the board.
Okay. So now that that's read into the record, could I have a motion, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2015-038 for a variance for 167 School Street to be continued to December 7th.
14th, right?
The December 14th is the next meeting.
I'm sorry, December 14th.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Callahan,
Continue to December 14th.
Mr. Perrin,
Continue December 14th.
Mr. Bailey,
Continued?
Mr. McCarthy,
Continue to December 14th.
Mr. Peck.
Continue.
Okay. uh, Anything else, Joe, at this point?
Nothing else at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting will be in 2 weeks. For the date will be on that, Joe, will be what?
November 23rd.
November 23rd. Okay. So without any other subject matters, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
So move.